What's your craziest, funniest travel story? I went to Kobe, Japan with a friend to see a concert. We were exchange students in Kyoto, so it wasn't that far, but we only had a day to see the city. We got to the middle of town and had no idea how to get around. We had a map, but were stuck on how to get up the giant hill in front of us, and we didn't know how to get anywhere on foot. Just then, as we panicked about what to do, a man came up to us. We both spoke Japanese, so we told him we were lost. He told us to follow him to his house. He had a car and told us to get in. My friend and I looked at each other like WTF, but Japan is pretty safe and we had no other way to get around, so we got in his car and he took us to his house. His wife made us tea and gave us snacks, and they talked about how their son was living in the US and they were so sweet. Then, I guess the man changed or something and took us back out to his car. We drove up the big hill and told him to just drop us off near a museum we wanted to see, but he insisted on waiting for us. He walked with us around the neighborhood after we went to the museum, and he took us to an ice cream place his friend owned. We got free ice cream, and then his friend told us to come upstairs and look at his jewelry collection. He made and sold pearl jewelry that was gorgeous. It was fun to learn about that kind of work. Then the man drove us to Chinatown and we said goodbye. We ate in Chinatown and went to our concert, but the best part of the day was being toured around by a local. Had we said no, we would have missed out on a cool way to see the city. I'd probably only do that again in Japan, though.
I, Guy, was traveling Brazil with 3 girls. We were all in our early 20s. We were at a mansion pool party in Rio de Janeiro with some older expats, they were in their 40s I think, that we had met through a series of friends of friends. We each had 2 caipirinhas and proceed to become blackout drunk off the 2 drinks. We are quite certain that the expats put roofies in them. A very buff girl with rockin' dreadlocks and biceps from the nearby favela was dancing in the same general area as one of the girls in our group. The local girl was far bigger and stronger than anyone in our group, including me. The girls bumped into each other a few times, which escalated to shouting/swearing, and eventually a fist fight. Expats start freaking out because their plan to rape us all just went south. I ran in and pushed the local girl one way and my friend the other. Next thing I know, some guy is pushing me backwards through the crowd by my collar. Given that we are blackout drunk/roofied at the moment, the next thing I recall is being on the other side of the pool, and the first thing I see there is the local girl staring me down. She stomps over and punches me in the face, and immediately after I am scooped up under my arms by the 2 biggest men in suits who appeared to be security guards, and they literally carry me away like I was a child or something. I was pretty sure I was in for a really bad time, but luckily on my way out I see one of the expats that speaks Portuguese, and tell him to come, with which he does. Turns out our whole group is just getting kicked out of the party for fighting. We all disband, lose the expats, and eventually meet up back at the hostel, at which point one girl is so roofied she can't move. In the morning when we compare stories, it turns out that after I was pushed into the crowd, the other 2, very small, girls jumped in on the fight too, and one's knee was extremely bruised from a kick that she made. We didn't realize until after the night that the expats most likely had malicious intentions with us. The 4 of us ended up returning to the same party the following weekend without the expats because after all it was pretty epic. We saw the same girl standing in the same place, and just decided to stay far away from her and enjoyed the night. That's the only fight that I've been in my adult life. 4 of us got roofied by some weirdos at a mansion pool party in Rio, and then all beat up by one girl that had nothing to do with our original problem of being roofied.
I met a bunch of guys in Hoi An during my trip to Vietnam last summer. After a few beers, they managed to talk me into extending my stay another day and doing the Hai Van Pass with them on motorcycles. So Dan whips out his map, and the route is Hoi An Da Nang Hai Van Pass Hue. All 4 of us booked from different operators, but somehow our bikes had matching LV embossed seat covers. We take some photos and don matching tropical fruit print t-shirts to commemorate the whole thing, and set off at 9:30 a.m. Everything was fine until we got onto the motherfucking mountain. One of the guys got a flat tire halfway up the motherfucking mountain, and we were stuck. We couldn't go up or down, because it was way too dangerous and there were many trucks going up and down that road. We didn't want to risk anything. So 10 minutes pass and we're baking under the hot sun, wondering what we should do. He called the operator, but the operator literally said something like, "There's nothing we can do." At this point, we're like, okay. We know we're pretty much fucked. But the deposit for the bike was pretty hefty, and we couldn't just leave the bike there, right? TBH, though, we did seriously consider that after baking for an hour in the hot sun. We didn't do it only because a guy in a motorcycle pulled up in front of us. Initially, we thought it was one of the operator's friends, that they pulled through and managed to send someone down. But then we never told the operator where we were, so that was highly unlikely. Anyway, so this Vietnamese dude comes around, doesn't speak a single word of English beyond telling us how much the repair would cost. He suggested replacing the tire, but it was like the same price as renting the bike for the trip, so we were like, no. And he eventually settled on taping the puncture in the tire for us. My poor friend had to inflate the tire by himself even, haha. I have a great photo of that. So that's done, and we continue up the mountain. The Vietnamese repairman decides to escort us up. To this day I'll never know why, but thank God he did, because about 5 minutes later my poor friend's tire was flat again. At this point, I was close to losing it. Turns out there was a nail in the tire, and patching it with tape won't fix it, duh. So like the Vietnamese dude tapes it back up, and gets us to go down the hill, help, to find a mechanic. So we do that. When we're back in Da Nang, he waltzes into the first house he sees, talks to the guy in rapid Vietnamese, and then bam, problem solved. I was pretty happy because they let me refill my water bottle there. And we thought he deserved it because he did get an operator that was cheaper. With the bill for the repairs, he ended up paying the same rate the rest of us did, haha. After several hours baking in the sun, and one new tire later, the four of us continue on our journey back up Hai Van Pass. It's already midday, but the show must go on, and we're pretty hungry. Vietnamese dude follows us up the mountain. I guess it's on the way for him. And when we finally reach the top, he motions for us to follow him to this little place for lunch. Excellent unobstructed view of Vietnam's coastal scenery and cheap lunch meal. At some point, I think we were scared that the whole thing was a scam that would culminate during lunch, but we were too tired at that point to give a damn. Besides, it was Vietnam. TLDR, even though it went all sorts of ways, the Hai Van Pass was the most memorable of all the solo trips I've made in Southeast Asia the past 2 years. Even more memorable was how I was so proud of myself for not getting into an accident the whole day, only to hurt my toe and lose a toenail just before arriving at the hostel. Walked around with a bloody toe for the rest of that trip.
What is the funniest real-life story you can tell?
2 of my drunk friends go into the bathroom together since the both really had to pee. One starts peeing and the other can't hold it. So he knees down a little bit and tries to pee in the same toilet right behind the first guy. From between his legs, he peed all over the dude in front of him. It was funny when they came out the bathroom laughing and trying to explain themselves.